You're listening to a Tab Media's special report on life and ministry in the Arab Middle East. I'm Jennifer Rash, your host, here with co-host Dr. Bob Terry, editor emeritus of the Alabama Baptist newspaper. And joining us in the studio from Beirut, Lebanon, leaders of the Arab Baptist Theological Seminary, current and nearly retiring President Elie Haddad, and incoming President Wissam Nasrallah. Hey, welcome to Alabama.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
It's great to be here.
All right, I have to ask, did I get the names right?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I was so scared. I am so glad you took some time to just spend with us while you're here in the area. Tell us what brought you to Alabama.
So this trip, so I conclude my time at ABTS after 20 years at the end of September.
Okay.
And Wissam was appointed by the board to start on October 1st. So this trip is to introduce Wissam to some of our key partners. So we're traveling around the U.S. and meeting with lots of folks.
Okay, so not just Alabama. You're moving around a
Not
little bit.
just Alabama.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. But
Yeah.
while you're here in Birmingham, it is our pleasure, and we really appreciate you taking some time to share with us. So Dr. Terry is going to be... he's going to drill in just a minute. But just before we get there, tell us just a little bit about the seminary and how it is connected to partners in the U.S. And that'll get us a good foundation to build from there.
So the seminary started in 1960. It was planted by Southern Baptist missionaries. So Finley Graham was the first president. And between 1960 and the start of the Civil War in Lebanon, 1965 through 1990, ABTS was busy preparing pastoral leaders for mainly Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. And then the ministry sort of suffered a lot during the Civil War. And then the missionaries left in the 1990s, and ownership was transferred to a local Baptist society that was formed to take ownership of the three ministries that were available at that time. And since then, God has provided teams of Lebanese leaders who have taken the ministry to the next level. And the vision of ABTS has really widened since then. We can talk more about that if you like.
Fantastic. And so you said 20 years as president?
20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that you're doing a handoff. I think that's really important and something that Dr. Terry and I know about. We did a handoff here as well. So I love that. And I would love to talk a little bit later about your thoughts on that as well. But Dr. Terry, what are you thinking? Where do we go? There's so many questions.
Well, perhaps we could begin by helping us understand what life is like now in Lebanon. Lebanon seems to have gone from crisis to crisis to crisis. You've had the economic crisis, you've had political crisis, most recently the recent war.
Right.
Can you reflect on that and help us understand what life is like for people who are citizens of Lebanon?
Lebanon has a tumultuous history. Since its independence, we haven't had long periods of peace, unfortunately. And the whole region of the Middle East wasn't at peace either. And so everything that was happening regionally reflected internally on life for people. Recently, we had a crisis, a financial crisis that started in 2019. And I think we're still in that economic cycle. This led to a crisis of governance, a political crisis, a humanitarian crisis, and the recent war that started in September between Hezbollah and Israel. So the Lebanese people have been through a lot. And unfortunately, what we see today is the hope of most Lebanese is to travel abroad. And we've had several cycles of immigration and exodus in the history of Lebanon. And we're witnessing a major cycle of exodus in the past few years. So most young people want to come here or to North America. So life is hard. We used to be a country where there was a decent middle class. That middle class almost disappeared. So there is a major social crisis ongoing today as well.
Now, Lebanon is located, let me see if I can remember correctly. You border Syria, Israel, and the
Mediterranean.
Yeah. And so it's one point, just being on the sea was a big thing, right? Isn't there a history of Beirut being a destination spot of some sorts historically because of its location?
Yeah, Lebanon sits on a major trading route between Egypt and the North African coast and the northern part of the Mediterranean. So throughout history, merchants would cross through the Levantine coast, coming from Europe down all the way to Egypt. So this is historically speaking. After World War II, Lebanon was one of the most developed countries in the area. This is why it got the name the Switzerland of the Middle East, or the Paris of the East.
Okay, that's what I think I had noticed
Right.
that somewhere.
Because of tourism,
Okay.
a vibrant banking sector,
Right.
and it was
Education,
Education,
hospitals,
hospitals.
healthcare, everything.
Wow. Okay.
and it played the role of a link between East and West.
Okay. Okay.
Is it physically safe for the citizens there now?
Relatively safe. There are still some incidents every day. Yesterday there was some bombing, but highly targeted. So people elsewhere, they feel safe. Life is back to normal, basically.
So physical safety is not a reason that people are wanting to migrate somewhere else.
It's opportunities, economic opportunities, and especially Christians, cultural Christians come out of Lebanon. They feel that the future in the region is not for them and their families, so they try to set up outside somewhere, live in Canada, US, Australia, Europe.
And this has been a trend all over the Middle East, seeing historic Christian communities leave. One small example: there were 3 million Christians in Iraq before 2003. Now there are less than 300,000. It's the same story in Syria. Before the civil war, there was a very decent Christian population in Syria. Today they're less than 200,000, down from 2 million. So throughout the Middle East, we're seeing historic Christian communities leaving. This is why we call it an exodus.
That has to impact your work through the seminary then, as far as training and preparing.
Let's define the term a little bit more clearly. So when we say Christian, it's a little bit different than here. So religion is something very important in the Middle East, and everyone is born into the religion of their parents. So when we say Christian, it's more of a cultural identity. It does not necessarily mean that they're followers of Jesus.
Okay.
So they can be very secular. They can be atheists and identify as Christians. Similarly, there can be Muslims who follow Jesus. So in terms of ministry, talking about the church and the gospel is a bit different than talking about Christianity. So when we talk about Christians, it's the traditional cultural presence in Lebanon and the region.
Is religious strife an issue in Lebanon?
It has always been, and it continues to be, because of a very strong sense of identity. We're born into a religion, and politicians usually do a good job in presenting themselves as the protectors of that community. And so there is always a suspicion towards the other. It's an us and them versus mentality. And one of the reasons why this is still lingering since the Civil War is we never had a proper reconciliation process. We decided to have a general amnesia. And so the narrative of the war is transmitted to the next generation. Because people outside of Beirut mainly live in more or less homogeneous religious communities, there is not much shared life with other faith groups. And so it's very easy to portray the other as the responsible for the plights of what's happening in the country.
And it doesn't help that the form of government in Lebanon is very sectarian. everything in Lebanon is by religion. So it doesn't help bringing people together. Like we were talking about President of Lebanon being always a Maronite Christian, Prime Minister always a Sunni Muslim, Speaker of the House always a Shiite Muslim, and so it goes in top levels of government and military, and issues of personal status are addressed by the spiritual courts. So if I'm a Baptist, I can only be married in an evangelical church type of thing. So that does not help in this religion tapestry that we have in Lebanon.
That is complicated.
It is complicated.
So in a sense, when Lebanon was founded, we were a state, but not a nation. So we had government, we had borders, but we do not have a shared sense of what brings us together as a people. We did not have a project for the future as a Lebanese community. And obviously there are historical reasons for that.
One of the more current developments has been the new government in Syria. Has that yet had an impact in Lebanon?
So just to recap, the Assad regime has been in power in Syria since 40, 50 years, approximately. And since 2011, there has been a bloody civil war that led to massive displacement and refugees to all the region. And the civil war ended, the 13-year civil war ended in 13 days, which was absolutely astonishing. Nobody expected that to happen. The Assad regime was closely linked or affiliated with Iran and was a major supporter of Hezbollah inside of Lebanon. So when the Assad regime fell and there was a new government in Syria, the opposition took hold of government. This has weakened Hezbollah's hand internally within Lebanon. Syria has always been a back base for Hezbollah and has supported the Syrian regime throughout the 13-year civil war. So we saw the impact of that on the declining influence of Hezbollah internally inside of Lebanon.
What about refugees?
So what most people expected is that refugees would go back. Lebanon is a country of 4 million people with about 1.5 million refugees. That's massive. So 1 out of 4 person in Lebanon is a refugee. It's just insane. And the country, as we've mentioned, has been going through a financial and social crisis. So this hasn't helped. But most Syrian refugees do not have much to go back to. So we thought that people might go back. Some of them did to visit family and check on their properties. But I mean, the economy in Syria is in a very bad shape. And so they have nothing that would keep them there. So unless there is a massive investment plan that kickstarts the economy, we won't be seeing a lot of refugees go back into Syria. And on the contrary, sectarian violence within Syria has led to the influx of new kinds of refugees, the Alawites, fleeing the new regime. So we've seen that in North Lebanon, several thousands of individuals have crossed the border seeking safety and refuge in Lebanon.
It sounds as if your country has economic problems, physical safety problems, political problems, social problems, religious problems, and yet the evangelical Christians in the nation have been ministering to people with whom they might have differences otherwise. Can you help us understand the kinds of ministries y'all have practiced over the years and the philosophy behind why you do these various ministries?
I want to start with our motto, and maybe Elie can build on the historical evolution of the evangelical community. But our motto for the past few years has been never miss out on a good crisis. Any
I like that. I'm gonna
every
adopt
crisis
it.
every crisis is an opportunity for the gospel, and is an opportunity for us to show the hope that comes by believing in Jesus Christ. So this has been really our driving mentality, our driving that drove what we did. It hasn't always been like that, and Elie has done extensive research on that in his PhD. If you want to.
So yeah, I grew up in a Baptist community in Lebanon, and churches in Lebanon, including evangelical and Baptist, like the rest of the Arab world, feel that we're a minority. Our churches tend to grow up as a survival community, survival mode. Just want to be left alone. We want to care for our own. We are not concerned with what happens outside the four walls of the church, whether people come to faith or not. The other is the enemy type of thing. And the civil war did not help with that. But we've seen a huge shift happening, especially since the Syrian war and the influx of the refugees in large numbers. It was not easy for Christian churches to be serving Syrians whose involvement in our civil war was not well received by many Lebanese, and they come from Muslim communities, they come from rural communities, even socially sometimes they don't belong. But the Holy Spirit has done something significant in terms of pressing on people's hearts in our churches to start responding to the crisis. It's interesting to see that for us as a seminary, we've been working through change of thinking, change of approach, change of theology, that the gospel is much deeper than just verbal proclamation. We need to be doing something as children of God. And then God is working on the ground, transforming our churches. So change from the academy, change from praxis is coming together and meeting halfway. It's fascinating to see how God has shaken our churches and transformed them in a way that now they can serve better and they can be a blessing. And we see the outcome of that. So many people have been served, and so many people have come to faith in Jesus Christ, and they've been discipled, and we're seeing a high number of Syrians that have come through our seminary and training to be church leaders who are equipped to navigate difficult circumstances where they tend to serve. And many of them have gone back to Syria, and some are still in Lebanon, some in Turkey, some in the diaspora, some in the Gulf. And they're just serving God. And this was, with the refugee crisis, this was our role as a seminary at the end of it, is that we want to make sure that there are enough trained leaders that if they go back, when they go back, they will take the gospel message with them, and God will do something significant with that. So the whole landscape has really changed over the years in our lifetime. It's just amazing what's happening. And this is not just in Lebanon. Lebanon, we're seeing a big expression of that, but it's happening all over the Middle East. It has happened in North Africa in the last 20, 25 years and still ongoing. It's as if this is God's timing for the Arab world. And God is drawing people to himself in large numbers that we had never seen before or thought possible in our lifetime. You know, the whole mission world has been praying for the 1040 window for the longest time, that they would come to faith. And the whole Arab world is inside that 1040 window. And it's happening right now in front of our eyes. But unfortunately, many don't recognize it because it doesn't look like something that we are comfortable with. We are seeing new forms of followers of Jesus, and we are seeing new expressions of church that make us uncomfortable. So that's why you don't hear about it enough in our churches around the world.
Doesn't fit the mold that was
doesn't fit,
kind of thought through.
Doesn't fit our mental paradigm.
Right.
It's something different, and it challenges us. And we need to recognize that as a church in Lebanon, that the future of the church is the non-Christian background church. It's the people that are coming to faith all over Lebanon and the region, not just those who were born into Christian families.
We've learned that God had to work in us before he can work through us. that we needed to forgive, we needed to be challenged, and we needed to get outside of our comfort zone. And it's been wonderful to see that process of transformation happen within the churches we work with. So Thimar, the Baptist Society, under which is ABTS, works with about 50 churches in Lebanon and Syria, and we do all the response work through local churches. We never do direct work. And because we believe the church is the bride of Christ, and the church needs to be serving its community so that it can communicate the message of the gospel as clearly as possible. And this happens in the context of relationship. If we're doing mass food distribution without relationship, we're just tackling one side of the need, whereas churches can respond holistically. They will serve their physical needs, but they will also listen, be present, know people's stories. They will know their names. They will visit them and show them practically the love of Christ. And in the context of relationship, this is where we can share the hope that we have in our Lord. And so this model working through local churches is a core value of ours. If our programming stop one day, the local church will always be there, and relationships will continue. And so, this is how we've seen that process of change happen.
So going from your food distribution, now your food distribution is to people who are hungry and in need, not just to evangelical Christians. Is that correct?
It has never been just for evangelical Christians. It has always been to the most vulnerable. So we cannot serve all the needs. So when we looked at vulnerability criteria, the most vulnerable were the refugees. So these were the main recipients of support. Obviously, after the financial crisis, the Beirut port explosion, this definition expanded to include a lot of other communities, Lebanese, Muslim, Christians, all kinds of faith groups. And one key element is that the support we give is unconditional. So people are not asked to come to church 1, 2, or 3, or 10 times so that they can be served. We will serve them unconditionally, and we will show them unconditional love. And it is this unconditional love that spurs people to ask, why are you helping us? What do you want? Because people are so much used to things being transactional. You come to my church, I'll help you. You come to my religion, I'll feed you. Mm-hmm. So it's a transactional mentality. When you go beyond that transactional mentality and people see unconditionality, they're surprised and they ask, what's behind that? And when we say we've been loved freely first, mm-hmm. so that we can love freely back, and people go like, whoa, who's your God? Wow. And they want to know. And they want to come to church because they want to understand what sort of value is that. But when you're transactional, this is how the world works. And especially in times of poverty and when people are vulnerable, spiritual blackmail is very easy. We always say it's very easy to fill a church today. You distribute food, after a service you fill the pews. Mm-hmm. But is this really what we want? Once the support stops, people will go. We want people to be genuinely interested in Jesus, in who Jesus is. And they will be interested in him when they see his people living in an extraordinary way, in a way that the world does not know, in a way that is sacrificial, in a way that is costly, in a way that reflects the values of the kingdom that are different from the values of the world.
Wissam, you did an article recently. I believe the title was something like From a Pulpit-Focused Church to a Church Focusing on the Priesthood of Believers. Is this the kind of thing you were trying to encourage in that article?
Yes. Unfortunately, Christian ministry has become very consumerist, both in Lebanon and around the world. People show up on Sunday, they consume a good message. They do a like on Facebook if the sermon was good, or if the sermon wasn't too bad. And it's just passive Christianity. And we've subcontracted spiritual work to the professional in the building. Now, don't get me wrong. We believe in good preaching, in good expository sermons. That's essential. It's very important for the life of the church. But if it leads to just us being consumers, there's something wrong. And so the idea, and this is the ethos of ABTS, we believe in the priesthood of all believers. People come to church, as we read in Ephesians, to be equipped for the work of ministry. They don't come to be entertained. They don't come to have a good time. They don't come to just be stimulated intellectually. They come to be equipped for the work of ministry. So every believer has a responsibility to reflect Christ in their daily life, whether it's in the 8 to 5 window at work, right? Amongst their communities, with their neighbors. And so this is really what we're encouraging churches to do. Is every member of the body of Christ is important for the mission of God in our region. If it relies on the shoulders of one person, I think we won't go too far. Elie has given this theme a lot of reflection as well.
How have you implemented this theme in your seminary coursework?
So, as I mentioned a bit earlier, that the way ABTS started was for pastoral leadership for specifically Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. That has grown a lot since then. Number one, our regional seminary, we serve the church all the way from Morocco to Iraq down to Yemen and South Sudan. The religious freedom that we have in Lebanon allows us to legally enroll students in seminary who come from various backgrounds. So we feel the responsibility for that. And number two, our curricula are more about missional training, missional leadership. So we want to train leaders for the church, but not just for church-based ministries, but for workplace-based ministries and for marketplace-based ministries. And in essence, a missional church is where every member would see himself or herself as a minister, as a missionary to wherever God has placed them, to any circle of influence that they have access to, whether it's their family or the building they live in or the gym they go to or the school they learn at or the job that they work at. We are full-time missionaries and helping them explore, what does that mean for us? What does it mean for me to be a missionary in the workplace where God has placed me? So it's out there in the marketplace and workplace, just like the New Testament. That hasn't changed. That's where believers meet unbelievers. That's where the message needs to be spread. As Wissam was saying, we come back to church to worship and to fellowship and to pray and to be that community and then be equipped so that we're sent out for ministry. So every one of us is called for ministry. And that's very important in the Arab world. So our graduates are not looking to look for church building and fill up an empty pulpit somewhere. Our graduates are always looking to engage where God is at work, at the level, at the grassroots level, at the level where people are meeting their needs. That's essential for us.
Are the graduates finding resistance if they end up in an established church that maybe has not followed that philosophy? And if so, how are they navigating that?
It's a very good question, Jennifer. So our geographical region is very diverse as we serve the whole region. So in the Middle East, this is partly true because there are established churches. But when you go outside the Middle East, where there were no Christian communities a few years ago, then you don't have churches with empty pulpits. And most of the churches are either underground or low-profile house churches, that type of thing. So the ministry that our churches want to engage in, we categorize them all as church planting activities. And that look differently in different parts of the Arab world.
One of the challenges here for seminaries is bringing men and women to the institution for on-site instruction.
Yeah.
There are not that many Christians or evangelical believers in Beirut, and you serve a large geographical area. So help us understand how you've addressed that issue.
So we used to bring them to Beirut. And so it was all in-person, on-campus education. That's how we knew how to do it. That's how the world did it before online was accessible to everyone. But it was tough because, as you were saying, they come, they are trained, and then they go back. Do they fit back in? Their vision has expanded and their understanding has expanded. Will they fit back in? So that was a challenge, but the positive side of coming on campus is that we're able to help them form a community where life-on-life kind of engagement happened. So that helped a lot with the transformative elements. But placement was always an issue. With COVID, we pivoted all our programs to either fully online or hybrid. So they no longer have to come to Beirut for 3 years. So now we work with them while they are in ministry. And several things happened as a result of that. Number one, now we are able to work with key leaders who are so immersed in ministry that they couldn't have left for 3 years to come to Lebanon to be trained. So now we work with them while they are in ministry. That changes the way we do formation. And that has been a steep learning curve for us, and we are still learning. But it's very exciting because they are in ministry. So now all of our students are in full-time ministry, and they study and are equipped while they are in ministry. So we come alongside them, and when they are being trained, they are being transformed, and their church community is transforming with them. So number one is realizing that spiritual formation is a shared responsibility between the seminary and the local church. So the more closely we work with the local church, then the better outcome we get. The challenge is when our students are the key leaders in the local church. But that's why now we're sending a lot more faculty teams to the communities where we have students. So since COVID, it's like we flipped the seminary. Instead of them coming to campus to be trained, now we go out to them. We go out to them through synchronous, asynchronous online education, and we go out to them by having our teams go and be with them where they are, provide context for formation, and provide additional lifelong learning for our graduates. We have a team right now in Tunisia. 2 weeks ago, we had a team in Egypt. Last month, we had a team in Morocco. At the end of the month, we have a team going to Iraq. So God has really opened up new ways for us to do this kind of ministry. And since COVID, we've more than doubled our enrollment. And now our programs are accessible to a lot more communities around the Arab world. So COVID has been a blessing in disguise for us. God had been preparing us before 2020. Since 2015, we launched our first online program, but we hesitated in moving all our programs into online. We couldn't convince ourselves that we can give up on campus-based training and then go out there through online. But God used COVID to nudge us into a different kind of education. And that's the journey that we went through during COVID. All educational institutions were thinking, when do we get back to normal? And God took us into a different journey where the question changed very quickly. So the question became, what will the new normal be? What should theological education in the Arab world look like for the future? What's the new frontier for theological education? It's been an amazing journey.
I want to affirm that any training is better than no training. At the same time, there is such a difference in quality of training that having a degree from institution A is not the same as having a degree from institution B. The preparation, the knowledge, the skill, whatever, is not the same. How do you ensure that you're providing top quality training for your students?
The number one thing we did, and that was since 2009, is we really refined our philosophy of education. So even though we are a denominational school, we don't indoctrinate, we educate. It's not about teaching, it's about learning. And we worked very hard on our philosophy of education. So we revisited all of our curricula in a way that are relevant to what God is doing in the region. You know, our curriculum was very much like traditional curriculum you find here or anywhere else in the world. It was as if you're training the leaders of tomorrow to answer the questions of yesterday in Christendom or a totally different context. It wasn't relevant to an Arab Muslim world. So we created something that's very contextual, that addresses the needs of our region and very holistic. So we've introduced educational outcomes in 3 dimensions: affective, behavioral, cognitive. So it's not just about filling the head with Bible and theology. That's very important, but that's not enough. We want to see formation, leadership formation, spiritual formation, and we want to see acquisition of skills as well. So they have equal importance and integrated. So our curriculum is integrated. So we don't have the silos that you usually find in theological education. This is biblical theology, this is systematic theology, this is historical theology, practical theology. We merge them all together. Life is integrated, and the way the brain thinks is integrated. The old system of doing education was building blocks. We give them building blocks and then hope that somehow they will make the connection. With this philosophy of integrating everything together, it's more like a spiral approach. We go through themes that would touch on all of the different angles and perspectives and dimensions together, and then we go deeper every year so that students can connect what they're learning with what they already know, and they can connect it with their own life and ministry. And the more they can make that connection, the more they will retain what they're learning. So we've played around a lot with the philosophy of education. And since we pivoted to online, we had been working hard on benefiting from what the online environment can give us. We lose a lot by not having everyone on campus, but we gain a lot. So now we have access to people where they are in their ministries, in their own communities. So building on that as well in our education. So we've built something that can continually evolve. As the realities are changing around us, we can respond to that very quickly and keep refining the approach and the content in a way that our training is still very relevant to what's happening in the world today.
And I believe you have the accreditation from Europe and Middle East.
Correct.
Theological.
Correct.
Is that for your online as well as your... Everything
we do. And even with our non-formal training, God has really grown us into non-formal training as well. So we have non-formal, we have certificate, we have our vocational degree, we have academic masters, and now we have PhD in cooperation with 2 other seminaries in the region. So everything is accredited. Even non-formal, there's something in the world of education now called micro-credentials. So we are getting licensed as a micro-credentials provider. So that would encourage people to engage with the material, even at a non-formal level, and get the micro-credits, and then they can stack them up and use them towards a degree program if they choose to continue a degree. So this is very important for us. Quality assurance is a top priority. And our team at ABTS is very involved at leadership level with the European Council for Theological Education and with the Middle East and North Africa Fellowship of Theological Schools.
Wissam, how do you hope to carry that forward?
As you can hear, I'm not here to fill a vacancy. I'm stepping into a legacy. And a lot has been done in the past 20 years to build an institution that is agile, that can adapt to new realities. God knows how much adaptation we needed to have in the past few years. So I hope to be a good steward of what was already built and to continue that faithfully. We're blessed with a good team of qualified academics and qualified administrators. So I'll be relying on them a lot as we put a vision for the future, building on this strong foundation that we have. Education is changing, as Elie shared. I think next year will be very different from this year, especially with AI. So this shows us how much theological education is more about formation than information. Although students need to have a solid base based on the truth found in Scripture, but they need to be agile in the way they do ministry, in the way that they engage. And our hope is we will have people, we will be shaping minds, people who have good critical thinking, but also nurture worshipers. And if any process of education doesn't lead in a higher degree of worship to God, of enjoying God, of delighting in God, we're probably missing out on something very important. John Piper said, missions exist because worship doesn't. And so ultimately our end goal is for people to worship God and to recognize Him. And so we hope to nurture that in the hearts of our students. It's harder to do it online. And so based on what Elie shared, we hope that faculty traveling to where our students are will be able to develop and nurture local learning communities where students gather wherever they are. They can to pray, to study Scripture, to study together, and to build fellowship and community. And we hope to do that within the context of local churches. And this is why the partnership between the seminary and local churches is essential. One other area where we feel that we have a lot of room to grow in is counseling. The past few years has been very difficult on people. Both, I mean, we've enumerated all the crises that happen in the region. And so people are tired, people are exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so the need for good Christian counselors is exploding. And I think social media isn't helping either. We've seen the effects of that even here in the US and in most countries. So having people who are trained on how to listen well, how to accompany, how to direct, how to coach, how to mentor, and how to help people deal with all these struggles is very, very important. So we have a counseling component in our curriculum. We hope to grow that in the coming few years so that we can have a program or a degree that caters to this growing need in the region.
I keep hoping that churches will actually add a staff member, maybe two, where they hire Christian counselors on staff to be available to their community of service. Right. We have all the other ministers, all the other staff members. To your point, it's such a need now. If we actually provided locations for them to land, it could really, really help serve that need.
The hardest job in the world is being a parent today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there has been an age where parenting is more complicated than today. I have two kids. I know what I'm talking about.
You do.
And I think this is an area where the church needs to play a bigger role with young parents, with formation, with mentoring, with coaching. To your point.
In these years that you're transitioning from an old way to a new way of training ministers for service, what kind of affirmation have you received that gives you hope that this is the right method and this is the method that God can use as we go forward?
Number one, transition is not a one-time event. Transition will continue to happen. As our common friend Gary Nelson used to say, these days the pace of change is much faster than the pace of learning. By the time that we get accustomed to the way things are, they have changed already. So transition and change is an ongoing thing. Otherwise,
it's a mindset.
Yes. Otherwise, we'll stagnate and things will stop. Assessment is very important for us. So we have assessment at every level of our operation, including assessment of among our students and their churches and how effective they are being. And we use that feedback to be an input to curriculum revision and refinement. So ABTS has become known for innovation. We are a place where innovation takes place, and we are happy to be a laboratory of new ideas. We are comfortable living in liminal space, in the place where there's no going back, and then the future in front of us is still uncertain. We haven't been there, and sometimes no one has been there. We need to experiment and chart a new course, be pioneers sort of thing. And I think that will continue, especially with Wissam. This will continue into the future, stabilizing what we have and making sure that we have a strong foundation, scalable programs, and then keep watching what God's doing and responding to that very quickly.
Can you share with us some of the incidences of what God is doing in the Middle East and North Africa? Of course, without jeopardizing ministries anywhere. You've referenced that God is at work, that people are coming to Christ, that communities of believers are forming.
Yeah.
Can you give us any stories that would illustrate that?
Not too many stories because we're on air, but definitely God is redeeming people to himself all over the Arab world, Middle East and North Africa in so many ways. And we've seen so many people come to faith through visions and dreams, and through media and through other things. But visions and dreams...
that's difficult for Baptists, right? It was difficult for us.
Absolutely. But this is...
you struggle with that, yes.
This is very real, and it's happening. Sometimes with some, I think this is sort of a slap on the face to the church. If the church is not doing its job in proclaiming the gospel and proclaiming the love of Jesus, God can bypass us anytime and go and draw people to himself. But it's obvious this is his timing. Although the whole region is very volatile, and with the wars and with the hardships and with the persecution sometimes, and with the extremism and with the failed Arab Springs, and everything is happening around there. It's really shaking the communities and people, and it's making people question their faith and question whether their religious system will be the solution to their problems for the future. So they are asking questions. Many are becoming atheists, and many are considering the claims of Jesus. And this is a very opportune time for the church to be able to navigate that. That's why training leaders who are able to understand their Bible well, understand their context well, what God is doing, they are able to read the signs of the times and mobilize their church communities to respond appropriately, understand what God's doing in their lives, in addition to understanding what God has done in the last 2,000 years of Christian history and how the church has responded in that history. We're not in a vacuum. We come as a result of God's work in the last 2,000 years. So that's what we aim to do at the seminary, is to reinforce all of that so that our leaders are able to engage with what God's doing. God's doing the work, not us.
For me, two areas of immense encouragement has been to see churches being established amongst people groups that, for us, were a no-go. If I can think of the Druze community. Druze, not Jews. D-R-U-Z-E. They're a people group that are in Israel, in Lebanon, in Syria.
Okay.
And they're very syncretic, you cannot become Druze, you have to be born Druze. For us, don't waste your time on a Druze, with ministry or missions. And yet today we see Druze churches led by Druze pastors or Druze leaders. And I've never thought that I would see this happen in Lebanon. And on the contrary, looking at their zeal and their thirst is what Paul calls in Romans being provoked to jealousy.
Interesting.
And when Paul was saying, so when the Gentiles are coming to faith, he hopes that his own people, the Jews, will be provoked to jealousy.
It's modern day FOMO, right?
Right. And so when you attend a Druze meeting and you see the passion and the thirst and the energy, and yes, I am provoked to jealousy, and I hope to see that this dynamic within our own historic churches. So the Druze has been an immense source of encouragement. The Kurds are another big source of encouragement. As you know, the Kurds are between Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and a lot of them came as refugees to Lebanon. And God has worked within that community in an amazing way. And there are several Kurdish churches led by Kurdish leaders. And it's our privilege to be supporting them and equipping them to continue that. So this is just two examples. We can cite many others in Algeria with the Kabyles. So when we look at the Middle East from the West, sometimes we see a very dark place, a place where there is a lot of confusion and misunderstanding. But beneath all of that, God is at work, and God is redeeming people and changing the region, I hope for.
As y'all described it with your motto, don't waste a crisis, right? And then all you're saying that's happening, what comes to my mind is just these lights in the community and a calmness amidst the chaos, and how that in itself is God at work and drawing people. So that
absolutely.
I love that picture, that just even listening to your descriptions. And as you talked about the consistency of transition and how it's kind of always there, what are some tips? Because you seem to have accepted that, and you're riding that wave really well. What are some tips for those who might resist it more and still push back on the concept of staying aware and looking toward innovation and trying to look toward the future? How would you help other leaders?
I don't think we can afford not to change. The world will pass us by. And this is a quick way for the church to become irrelevant if we don't recognize how the world is changing and we're on top of it and respond to it. So we have to reconcile with change. And change is not an enemy. Change is a tool, not for the sake of change, but change is a tool that will allow us to remain relevant in the way the world is changing. And leaders who do not recognize that can't lead for long, I don't think.
I can share probably something from our own experience in the past few years. The past 5 years felt like 10 years, like a decade, given the amount of crises we had to go through. After the Beirut port explosion, this was a massive, massive explosion. I was hopeful, actually. I thought this is something that there's no way for things not to change. There's no way for the corrupt political system not to change. And guess what? It did not change. It got worse. It changed now, 5 years later. But I was depressed. I thought, if this event didn't cause change for our country, what will? And as Lebanese, we were constantly waiting, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? When will all this end? And we felt that God was teaching us something different. He was teaching us that don't wait for the light at the end of the tunnel. It might take years, but be the light inside the tunnel for others who are around you. And so instead of having this passive, just wait and see, how can you make a difference in the life of somebody around you today? How can you be a light for Jesus? And it was a journey for us. And this is where we came to accept, don't waste a good crisis. Don't waste a crisis, because you can make a difference in the life of somebody around you. So this has been a big learning experience and a spiritual journey as well for us.
There's a lot of despair around us, and we have a message of hope. The church has a message of hope, and so this is the time to be able to engage in ministry in the community.
How then can those of us in the West be supportive or helpful to the Christians of the Middle East, and specifically to those in Lebanon and to the Arab Baptist Theological Seminary?
For the seminary, we are contingent on partnerships. We exist because of partnerships, financially first, but much more than that. we're not tuition driven. Our students cannot afford to pay tuition. They come from very poor communities from all over the Arab world. So we raise scholarship support for every single student that we have, and we raise funds for every project that we do. We have amazing projects in terms of translation projects or building or non-formal training or whatever it is. So our connection with the West is very important because the West is much more resourced than we are. But we've been working a lot on theology of partnership, and for us, partnership is much more than just transactional. It has to be transformative. So we try to develop partnerships that are meaningful to both sides, ABTS and churches in the West. So that's why we travel a lot here, and many of our partner churches, they give us opportunity to speak to their congregation or groups of people about what God is doing in our region, the lessons that we're learning as a Lebanese church or as a seminary, and then we're able to feed back into the churches here. The way we've been learning lessons about peace and reconciliation. Well, there are lots of divisions here in the U.S. and everywhere in the world, and so there's a lot that we can. The buzzword these days is polycentric mission, right? It's mission from everywhere to everywhere. So we want to be part of that, and we want to be blessing, not just consumers of resources that come from the West.
And we hope our partners also speak into our ministry as well, and what they're experiencing, what they're going through, and how we can learn from that. So there's a mutuality element that is very important. So come visit us. It's safe. Come and see. Come and experience. Come and eat.
Yes, absolutely.
Seeing would and experiencing what's happening on the ground would be very important.
Makes sense. All right. Well, this has been fantastic, and I've learned so much, and I'm very interested in exploring more. Anything else, Dr. Terry, from your end?
I'm just grateful for the opportunity of meeting people that I've read about and heard about for a long, long time. Absolutely. Thank you for this privilege.
Thank you for hosting us, and it was a great conversation. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the ministry and what God's doing in our part of the world.
Very encouraging. Thank you. And inspiring.
You hear over the news all the bad news. You don't hear about what God's doing. So to be able to share what God's doing, it's a blessing.
Thank you so much.